Hi, and I can't believe that I'm saying this, but welcome to my channel. Or I guess I should say our channel, because it won't always be just me. If you've come over from Instagram, thank you so much for coming over. And if you've just found me, hi, my name's Amy. I am a huge Disney fan, and I'm starting to vlog our trips. But obviously, to kick everything off, I thought let's get going with a Q&A. I shared it on my Instagram stories. I've got a load of questions which we'll go through, but I thought I'd just give you a very short background of me before we start to cover those questions. So I'm Amy, I'm married to Steve, and we are a couple in our 30s living in Hertfordshire. I have grown up on Disney, I would say. I visited both Disneyland Paris and Walt Disney World as a child. I then took Steve for his first park experience back in 2015 or 16, and we then honeymooned in Walt Disney World back in 2019. We then became annual pass holders in Disneyland Paris for 2 years before we took a break to go on our first Disney cruise. And then I became a pass holder again at the start of this year, 2026, because I was missing the magic. And obviously with the World of Frozen opening in Disneyland Paris, I snagged an annual pass before the prices went up, just so I could experience that magic over and over again this year. So then a little bit about me. Personally, I was part of Disneyland Paris's Dream Team back in 2023, which was a panel of expert guests that were selected by Disney to join their online chat service and help upcoming visitors with our knowledge and our experiences and tips and information and advice and all of those sorts of things to help guests get the most out of their upcoming trips. I absolutely love that experience. I made some wonderful friends in the team. I guess that's just a little bit extra about me. So like I say, I put up a story on my Instagram to kind of do a Q&A. So I guess I've got them all written down. Let's dive in. So what is your first Disney memory? I remember as a child having all of the VHS tapes in the cabinet and just watching them on repeat over and over. There was ones of the parade, there was the typical your typical films, but there were a lot of like park experiences that I used to watch as well. So that's probably my first memory. And then the first in-park memory that I can recall was when we went to Walt Disney World. It was the Christmas of 2000, and I remember watching the Christmas parade from the train station at the top of Main Street. So when was your first trip to the parks? So my first trip to Walt Disney World was that Christmas trip of 2000. By that point I was about 5, so I was still quite young, but like I say, I do still have those memories. And then my first trip to Disneyland Paris, I believe, was 2003. We got the Eurostar over, and I remember my parents told me that I was going to Edinburgh, and when we got to the Eurostar terminal they asked me to find my train time, but obviously there were only trains to Disneyland Paris, and that's when I found out that I was going. What's your favourite pair of Disney ears? Now, I love my Arendelle Aqua ones, and I wanted to wear them for this, but I actually couldn't find them. However, with the World of Frozen in Disneyland Paris at the moment, I am very much into bounding as well. I have recently been developing my Anna bound, which I very much love. So this pair of ears is very much becoming my next favourite, shall we say. Best piece of merchandise. This is a really interesting question. Obviously I've got stuff with me prepared. So my favourite piece of merchandise would be my Pandora bracelet. It's because it holds so many memories. I have a rule with this. I will only buy charms that are significant to a trip. So I won't just buy one for the sake of buying one because it's new or anything like that. It has to mean something. So like I say, as merchandise as a whole, I would say my Pandora bracelet, just because it holds so many memories. What has made you start vlogging now? I've just come back from a trip at the Disneyland Hotel, and as much as I've got the pictures to look back on, I wish I had the videos of how it felt the first time walking through the door, and just to capture that whole experience, because I don't think the photos can do that experience justice. Now, yes, I've been there, I've done that, I've stayed there, and I will never capture that first moment again, or I'll never get to experience that first moment again. But I know there will be other firsts in our park experiences, and I don't want to miss them. I missed vlogging out on our first cruise, and yes, I wish I had. But we move on. We can't change it. But do I think I'll be any good at vlogging? Probably not, because I will forget most of the time. So let's caveat this with, I'm sorry if our vlogs jump around a lot. I won't always look perfect on camera because I don't wear makeup 95% of the time. I just go as I am. I can't be dealing with trying to look perfect. Likewise with my hair. My hair gets fluffy, my hair is unmanageable, but that is me, and I'm not going to change who I am to be YouTube or Instagram or social media perfect. This is me. Take it or leave it. Will I be any good at the editing? No, probably not. Will I make it all funky and put things here, there and everywhere? Again, probably not, because I don't have a Scooby what I'm doing, but I'm here to give it a go and to learn as I go. So hopefully you'll stick around for it, but we'll see where we go. So what does a typical park day look like? So when it comes to Disneyland Paris, I will say we do have a priority pass. I won't be going into why. So our park days look very different now that we have the priority pass than when we didn't. So we typically don't go in for magic hour just because we don't feel that that's as valuable for us. We would rather be the night owls, stay till the end of the night, go to the shops or go to the bar after park closes, and then have a little bit more of a lay in the next day. And I'm not saying we lie in. I say we probably get to the parks for, I guess nowadays, 9:30, because we don't have magic hour. Typically we would kind of go for 9 o'clock, but if we're not staying on site and we don't have magic hour, we'll get there for probably 9:30, 10, and then we'll stay through. We are very much for the thrill rides, the food, the shows. We are not there for character meets. That's just not our vibe. I find it very awkward. And personally, we skip a lot of Fantasyland just because we're child free. We go for the thrills. We also like to take it a little bit chill. So we're not necessarily rush, but we don't dawdle our way around the parks. What are your park essentials to pack? So I do actually have plans to do a what's in your bag or what's in your day bag type video. But for me, I am very minimalist. I will take a water bottle, a power bank, annual pass, money. That's pretty much it, unless I've missed anything. But like I say, I will do a what's in my bag and we'll find out. So how do you travel to the parks? Assume this is how do we travel to Disneyland Paris. So I guess a little bit of backstory. When we first visited the park together, we did a 1-day trip. We were staying in Paris and we just went to the parks for the day. Then when we started going more regularly back in 2022, we used to go on a Monday, come back on a Friday. And we used to drive over. And this is because Steve is gluten intolerant. And at the time of these visits, we were very new to a gluten-free diet for him. So we were trying to navigate the world of gluten-free in the UK, and then the thought of having to travel and be gluten-free at the same time was a little bit overwhelming. So we stayed in self-catering accommodation at the time so that we could take over all of the gluten-free foods that we knew that he needed, and we could prepare his meals for him and take them into the park for lunch. And then at the time we would typically go back and have a gluten-free dinner for himself before we'd go back into the parks for the evening. So we always used to eat off-site. But as we've learned more about his gluten-free diet and we visited the parks more and learnt more about the parks, we've changed the way that we do our visits, and we now typically take shorter visits. And we would always fly over because we're not far from Luton. So we used to fly from Luton to Charles de Gaulle, and then typically we would get a Bolt or an Uber, or sometimes the train to the parks. However, at the start of this year, I did the Eurostar for the first time, and for me it is an absolute game changer, and it is now the way that I prefer to travel. It doesn't always work out. We will still look at the most cost effective. So if it is cheaper to fly, we shall do that. So I'll always compare, but we have driven, we have Eurostarred, we have flown. So if you've got any questions on any of them, I can kind of help. When it comes to the Eurostar, I have learnt to go via Gare du Nord and to get the RER rather than to go via Lille and get the train. Again, it makes it a lot cheaper. Not only are the trains to Paris cheaper, but also the transfer from Paris to Marne-la-Vallée is cheaper than if you go from Lille to Marne-la-Vallée as well. Eurostar is my preferred, but we do still fly. Do you stay on-site or off-site? So we've done both. We switch it up depending on what suits for our trip. However, as an annual pass holder, I find it cheaper to stay off-site, and typically when I've been travelling, depending on who I've been travelling with, will also impact where I stay. I do think that as Steve is about to be an annual pass holder, it will just work out way more cost effective for us to be off-site. That isn't to say that we won't stay on-site for certain things. I can't believe I'm saying this, have stayed at all of the Disneyland Paris hotels. I never thought I would get to do the Disneyland Hotel, so to be able to say that I've stayed at all of them just feels surreal. But typically nowadays we stay off-site, and we will either stay at the Val d'Europe area, or we'll stay at the ones with the Dream Castle and the B&B hotels, kind of explorers, that side. We're not too fussy. So ultimately for us, it's a bed at the end of the night. So as long as we can lay our head down and we can pick up some food either at the hotel or nearby, we are very much easy breezy. The cheaper we can do it, the better, because the cheaper just means more trips. Who do you visit the parks with? So obviously most of the time it is Steve and myself, but I do, however, take trips with friends. I have been so fortunate to meet some lovely, lovely friends through social media and have taken trips with them. I remember the first trip that I took with Nicole, I had literally only chatted to her online, and we arranged this trip. She rocked up at my door and off we went for an absolute whirlwind of a trip, and we were there in like from leaving to landing. It was something mental, like 36 hours is all we spent in France, but we had an absolute blast of a trip. So I do like to take trips with friends and see how friends do it differently and to experience it with different people. I have also done trips in the past with my family. We took them back at the start of 2024, and I'd love to be able to take them back, but I don't know if we would be able to. But most of the time it's just Steve and I. One day I might venture on a solo trip, but I don't know how I feel about that. But never say never. How much do you love Stitch? So this is an inside joke between some of my friends. I cannot stand Stitch. I don't know what it is, but I absolutely despise him. And I think what makes it worse is the hype for him, the fact he is plastered on every bit of merchandise you can find, UK or in France. He is everywhere and I cannot stand it. However, for a social media post, you will find a picture of me hugging a large Stitch plush, looking so happy. If I can find it, I'll pop it in here. But then there is also the reality that I took with the same plush to show how much I despise him. And again, if I can find that picture, I'll pop it in here. And then I guess kind of a round it off, favourite ride, snack, film and character. So favourite ride, I am very specific about this. And I think it just goes to show how much I've been at the parks. So in the Disneyland park, my favourite ride is Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland Paris because it is far superior. Row 15 at night once it has rained or in the rain. Why row 15? Because it's faster. Why at night? Because everything's glowing around it in Frontierland, and if you do time it right, you can actually see the fireworks from it, and that's pretty cool. And why in the rain? Because again, it makes it faster. I don't know the science behind it, but it is a thing. It makes it faster, so I stand by that. And then in Disney Adventure World, or shall we say Walt Disney Studios, because for me that's what it will always be. I do not like the name change. I'm trying to call it Disney Adventure World, but it is a struggle. So in Adventure World, favourite would be Tower of Terror, but I like on the lower level, the middle or the left lift, just because of the sequence that they do. So I just prefer those. The bottom right and the top right are my least favourite. They just don't seem to have the same bounce to them. Favourite snack. So I'm a bit of a foodie and I feel I've probably eaten at most places in Disneyland Paris and I've got an opinion on the food, and I could talk all day about the different restaurants, but let's not even go there. Like I say, Steve follows a gluten-free diet. I don't, but I won't ever go somewhere that doesn't have an option for him. So Cafe Hyperion is pretty much off the table because all they do is burgers. There isn't anything that he can have there because you can't customise and take buns off and things like that. So we know we're safe for him. We'll eat there. So in terms of restaurants, I know this was about snacks, but in terms of restaurants, our favourites would be Cowboy Cookout, and while Steve hasn't tried it, or Nordic Crown Tavern in Adventure World. Snack-wise, I'm partial to the new potato pancakes that are on Adventure Bay from the food stalls. I really like the chicken chipotle one, however, it has a little bit of a kick to it. But I do like the tart fillet from the seasonal food stand, so down by Ratatouille and It's a Small World. And then as a bring home treat, I really like the marshmallows from the Boardwalk Candy Palace. They're not as good as they used to be. There used to be a stick that was fully encased in chocolate and it was beautiful, whereas now it's a Mickey shape, which is fantastic for the pictures, and everything tastes better when it's Mickey shaped. But it's not quite dipped the same. I prefer the white and pink one over the Mickey one, and that is always my take-home snack. And I guess you can consider it a snack, but the chili from Last Chance Cafe, because it's very much grab it and go. Favourite film is Tangled. I don't know what it is about that film, but it just has me. I could watch it on repeat, no questions asked. Second favourite would be Moana, the first, not the second. And I don't know how I feel about a remake, but that's a whole other day. Favourite Pixar would be Toy Story. Stan forever. so excited for 5 to be coming out. And it is very, very, very closely followed by Coco. Again, pulls at the heartstrings, does its job. The colours, the music, incredible. Favourite character? Olaf. There's something so funny about him. He is so cute, but his sense of humour, it's just incredible. And when he does his little reenactment of the films, the shorts, everything, so funny. Love him. So that is me. I felt very nervous recording this. Hopefully I've got more comfortable with the camera. Who knows? I cannot tell you how many times I've stopped and started again. In fact, you can probably tell from the edit, but we've made it through. Video 1 done. So we will have a what's in my park bag, a trip announcement, and then obviously an upcoming trip series. I would love it if you subscribe to the channel and stuck around to see what we get up to. And of course would appreciate if you were to follow us on Instagram and follow our adventures over there. It is the same handle, Wopshots Adventure. Thank you very much, and we will see you on our next adventure. Bye.